Hello. Hello. My name is Lisa Kilgour. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Everybody who wants to be a part of the talk, come on and grab a seat. We are about to get started. I just have a couple admin things to tell you about. So the first one is, as a thank you for coming here, I thank you, but also Nature's Fair thanks you with a 15% off discount. So on everything that's not on sale, you get 15% off after the talk. So be sure to get your shopping done. And then this talk is sponsored by Mega Foods. And Mega Foods has this lovely gift basket at the very back that if you haven't put in a ballot, we're going to do the draw at the end after the questions. When I get into the questions, be sure you grab a ballot. Jennifer at the back can help get that sorted. And I would love to thank Jennifer and Robin from Mega Foods for doing so much in the organization of this, for Nature's Fair, for doing so much more than I do, for Chantal in head office, who's currently Facebook Living and Instagram Living this, so everybody who can't come can be here. And then you guys like took time out of your day to let me do this thing I enjoy doing, and I'm really, really appreciative of the time that you're spending here with me tonight. Thank you so much. And so I'm just going to grab my little remote, because what we're going to talk about today is best described as kind of anti everything that's happening right now. I've been in practice for 10 years, so I've spent the last 10 years, I've worked with thousands of people at this point, and I've noticed that what works in real life is gentleness, it's easiness, it's making changes that are so unbelievably easy. Oh, your chair broke. Can we trade her chair? Oh, we need two chairs, please. Oh, lovely. So what I've noticed is that it's not doing something dramatic and hard and challenging. It's doing something so easy that it's pretty much amazing. We need another one too, Jen. It seems almost impossible that this could actually work. That is how to create a real and healthy lifestyle. So what we're going to be talking about today are ways to shift your mindset away from this like ketogenic fad diet craziness into something really real, something permanent. Because all it can take sometimes is just one little step forward to feel significantly better. When I started out, I was in really rough shape. I was in my mid-20s. I was in university. I had asthma that was barely controlled. I had nerve damage down both my arms, tendonitis in both my thumbs. I was so foggy, I forget what day of the week it was and where I was going. And I was in a very, very competitive music performance program. I was a flute player who needed her lungs and her arms. And I also had an atrocious diet. So I was going from like specialist to specialist to specialist. Not a single one of them asked me what I ate. And what I ate was Fruit Loops and Skippy peanut butter. I ate a vegetable a month, maybe. But that was never a part of the conversation, including with the allergist that I went to because I noticed I was getting asthma attacks whenever I had dairy. And his answer was, nobody's allergic to dairy, but I'll test you for it just in case. All it took was one little step forward. So the very first thing I did was also one of the easiest things I did, and my brain turned back on. My inflammation started calming down. And I started developing a taste for healthy things that I slowly incorporated into my diet. It took me 6 years to go from the atrocious diet that I had to kind of what I have now, but I did it. And I did it so easily, I didn't feel like I was doing anything because I would make every change when I felt like it. And what I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that easiness is what allowed me to be the nutritionist I am now and eat the diet that I eat now because I'm incredibly stubborn and my brain will tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't do something. And instead, I just do what I want to do. And because I know what makes me feel good, that is the easiest choice. And so that's the concept I want to introduce today and give you ways to get there yourself. Because however you feel right now, you can feel a bit better possibly tomorrow, probably a week from now, just by making small little changes. So what we're going to be looking at today is mindset and the importance of kindness and your mindset in your overall health. We're going to be looking at studies that talk about how changing your health and beliefs can make a difference. We're going to be looking at easy food ideas that can like elevate your energy tomorrow. Like you just do them tomorrow and you'll feel better tomorrow. That's like my favorite kind of food ideas. We're going to be looking at some supplements because supplements can help bridge the gap. So wherever you are now and wherever you need to get to, these can just act as that kind of plank to get you over to the next place. Your diet is what matters the most, but sometimes we can get some help to get there. And I'll just talk about some supplements that can bridge that gap. And then we're going to look at some key takeaways. Then I'm going to open up the floor for questions, and then we're going to do that big draw. How does that sound like for tonight? Sound good? Okay. So the reason why I want to talk about this now and get a drink of water is because January tends to be a really popular time to make a lot of change. But the spring is when we make even bigger changes. So January, we have like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, and then usually we get off track by like early February, and then the weather usually warms up around now, and we think spring's coming, I need to really do something. And we tend to do things a bit harsher than necessary. That's why they don't stick. So I don't want you in December to be thinking about all of the same changes that you're going to implement for sure this time around. Instead, next December, I want you to feel like, wow, I really did something. What do I want to do next? And we can do that simply by making these smaller changes. Because health experts, and I live in that category, like to make it difficult. We like to tell you all the things that you should be doing. Isn't that a great word, should? I hate the word should. I have this like absolute rejection to the word should. If you tell me what I should do, I'll tell you why I shouldn't do it. But generally, we get these giant lists. Like you should be eating more greens and more fiber and having some antioxidants, and you also need to sleep, but then get some exercise. You need to be meditating and respecting your limits. Oh yeah, no gluten, no soy, no dairy, no sugar, no processed food, and nothing ever that you're going to like ever again. This is what's so impossible. And if we think we have to get here before we feel better, then this can be this barrier, like, oh my gosh, I know I need to stop doing this, and that's what's going to make me feel better. And really, you don't need to do all of this, and some of this you never need to do to create balance. I could name at least 10 clients, brand new clients this year, that at the end of telling me what their day is like, they say, and I need to stop eating bread. And this goes in phases every few years, and then I ask why, because you like it. And it's like, oh, but it's bad for me, right? But it's not. It might be for you, but it's not inherently bad. But if we have this like burden of this is the only way to get to health is to give up this thing I love so much, then we're always going to hold that guilt and that stress, and we don't need to. So instead, I want you to look at like how can we change how we look and rewire our health routine to create something that's a little bit more balanced. So let's throw away that list of do's and don'ts, because every do's and don'ts list is unique to each one of us. So me and dairy don't get along. So I generally don't have a lot of dairy. And when I don't have dairy, I feel better. But I have bread, because bread feels good to me. And so to say everybody should be off dairy and gluten would be wrong, would not be the truth even in my own body, let alone all of ours. So we just need to stop and get rid of those shoulds and just at first acknowledge that right now in this moment, we're doing the best that we can. We're doing the best we can with the time we have and the knowledge that we have, and that is pretty darn okay. And then we want to like be a bit kinder and gentler. So say we're trying to eat more whole foods, but then you're munching on a cookie. Instead of thinking that cookie is terrible and horrible and berating yourself for eating that cookie, what I would like to invite you to do is eat that cookie and enjoy it and feel it and see how you feel afterwards. Because when we give ourselves permission to have something that's a little off whatever you're trying to do, then you can be more present in it. you can enjoy it more, and your craving for that to do it again is going to lessen. Because if instead you're eating it with guilt, then the stress of that will make you want more cookies, first of all. And then if you're berating yourself of like, oh my gosh, I totally fell off the wagon yesterday, you're going to see this like giant climb to get back on it, and your body still wants more cookies, so you're just not going to. It's this diet on, off wagon thing. And instead, if a cookie is a part of your healthy life, you just have to enjoy it, then it becomes less powerful. It lets you actually see how eating that cookie makes you feel. So if you're curious about it instead and you eat that cookie, how do you feel later? How's your energy? Is it great or is it a bit low? How did you sleep that night? When you woke up the next morning, how do you feel? And if you relate these to that cookie, then you're like, oh, you know what? I felt better when I ate an apple. So maybe I'll eat that more. This is where real change happens, simply by letting yourself be imperfect and then being curious about your imperfections. So we're going to start with a couple ways to kind of rewire the words in our head, because it's the words in our head that really cause most of the problems. I don't know about you, but I've had in the past, I've worked really hard at this, a very mean, angry inner critic. I'm not going to ask for hands of who also has this, because I know it's going to be a lot of you, and we don't need to admit to these things. We don't need to out ourselves. And it's our inner critic, those like angry little words that can run through our head, that can make it harder to make change. And so what these 3 techniques can do is help quiet that inner critic. So mine no longer controls my life. I actually can do stuff and forget that it even exists. And what I can say is all 3 of these techniques can help, but you don't need to do all 3. You don't need to do any of them, because you're a grown-up and you can choose for yourself. But I'd like to introduce these concepts just to see if any feel good to you. And so the first one is self-love. And self-love may sound a little wishy-washy, but is actually incredibly difficult and really effective. So this is the research on self-love, which we'll talk about in a second. The concept of self-love is simply speaking to yourself the way you'd speak to a loved one. So when those words run in your head and say, oh, how could you forget to do this again? No, you're kind to yourself. Instead, you change it and say, you know what? I had a really stressful day. That's why I forgot to do that again. And anytime you think and you hear those words, how can you shift it? Would you let your daughter be taught this way? Or your niece, or your mother, or your sister, or your friend? Would you allow those words to be spoken to somebody you care about? And when you can start shifting that, you can start putting that care into yourself. And the research is really cool. That simply by accepting yourself and saying, you know what, you've had a hard day, it's okay, it makes you happier on its own. It can also encourage you to reach your health goals a lot easier, because you're not spent berating yourself for that thing that you missed, that thing that you didn't do. It can help with a lot of mental health issues, including anxiety and depression. It can really help procrastination, and this is where it helped me the most. I'm self-employed, and I am the queen of procrastination. I get deadlines done, but I don't get done other things that I want to do. And what I've found is that the kinder that I am to myself, the easier it is to be kind to myself when I'm in the middle of a project that I'm scared of. Because I realize my procrastination is fear. So the moment I realize that and I decided to speak nicer to myself, then I find ways to get over the fear. Most of it is just, I'm really afraid to write that article or create that project. Is there a little step I can do to get into it? Like, why don't I do some research on it? Yeah, that's something I can do. And just by changing my own inner self-talk, that became a lot easier. And then it can also just help you through adversity. So it's just watching those words in your head can help just get you through every single day. Another one is mindfulness. And so mindfulness at its core root is presence. And it's very simply being present right now in this moment. This is really hard in this life right now, or at least I find it really, really hard. I take lessons in presence, and I have for 4 years, and I don't know if my practitioner will say if I'm doing any better than I was 4 years ago. I hope she would. But what mindfulness is the reality of that in this moment right now, there's no stress. The doors are locked. There's no like bear gonna come in and eat us, so there's no like physical danger. No matter what's happening in your life, no, like if there is financial stresses or health stresses or family stresses or relationship stresses, there's nothing you can do about it right now because you're here, listen to me talk. And so when we can shut that out and just be present to this moment, we can get a break from all of those stresses. And in those moments is where we find joy. So no matter what's happening in your life, if you can just for minutes, for moments, squeeze out all of those stresses and just be here, we can have moments of joy no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what stress is happening. And what the clinically, like we have clinical research on this saying that it helps with depression and anxiety. That's not surprising, but it helps with pain and binge eating. It helps with emotional eating, weight management, and it definitely helps with digestive issues. Most digestive issues are triggered by stress. And so when we have moments of relaxation, we can calm our gut down. It can help with inflammation, cardiovascular health, and it can even help with loneliness. Because in this moment, you're not alone. And that's, I practice all three of these, and I've had to practice all three of these. And I find that mindfulness can really, really make a big, big difference. And I didn't know how unmindful I was until I started paying attention to my mindfulness. And then the third one is gratitude. And I saw it just before I left today, this great meme popped up on Facebook. And it said, it's not happy people who are grateful, it's grateful people who are happy. And that's what the research really shows. And what gratitude is a very simple practice. It's spending one moment in a day thinking of things that you're grateful for. I used this in one of the hardest times of my life where I was dealing with a giant pile of emotional turmoil. And in that moment, if you had asked me at any time in the day, there's nothing good happening. But I needed to get out. I needed to get out of it was mostly grief. It was mostly stuff that happened in the past that I was working through. So I thought, okay, I had heard about gratitude and I kind of like grasped onto it and said, okay, maybe this will help. So every night I thought of 5 things I was grateful for. And when I walked into this thing, I thought that was going to be near impossible. But I found every single night it was incredibly easy. That within seconds I could think of 5 things. And I practiced it for quite a few months. And what I found is every day I did it, I found more things to be grateful for while it was happening. So I would, something lovely would happen and suddenly I'd be like, yeah, this is something I'm going to be grateful for that tonight. And what they found is that it actually literally rewires your brain. So it can unshackle you from those emotions, so those spinning turmoil emotions, but it helps just allow your brain to find those joyous moments easier. It works even if you don't tell anybody. It works better if you write it down. Apparently, I didn't because I didn't feel comfortable doing that, and that's okay. And it still worked, and it has lasting effects. So I haven't done this in 3 or 4 years, and I still feel the after effects. And mostly because I forget, and mostly because I don't need it right now. And so this is really, really easy, and I do find it really, really effective. But what I want to leave you with in this section of rewiring your brain is the most important thing you can do is focus on what you're doing right. What are some good things that are happening and things that you're doing right now? Because I can guarantee, no matter where you think your diet should be, geez, I hate that word, you are doing something really good right now. So in the midst of my highly sugar, highly processed food diet, I always ate regularly. I always drank water. There could have been significantly more fresh food and fiber and good things for me, but I could say I was still doing that really well. And my first few steps were just repeating what I was already doing really well. And some things you can do is simply focus on beautiful moments that happen during the day and notice them. So it could be like this cute little baby that goes past and smiles. Like, how can you not love that? Like, that's just so cute. It could be a compliment that you received and to actually listen to it and take it. I'm great at negating compliments. Somebody tells me a compliment, I will then tell them some secret that they don't know about me. Like one time I was at a party and I had this like great outfit I'd put together, and I was getting a lot of compliments. And just before I left, my pants were too long, so I stapled them and so I just kept telling everybody about the staples holding my pants up. And I was like, why can't I just take this compliment? And so it's a practice of actually like listening to the compliment and taking it. Something as simple as a beautiful moment outside, some sun on your face. It could be petting your favorite animal. It could be spending time with a loved one and actually being present for it. And then also shifting your dialogue. Instead of like berating yourself for that cookie you ate, how about congratulate yourself for something you did? Like, I had my greens today. I went outside for a walk. I set a boundary and said no to something. And when I work one-on-one with clients, especially when we're in their second, third, or fourth appointment, this is what my job tends to be. They'll come in, they're like, oh, well, you know, I had this really bad week, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll take them through all of the good things that they've done. And then we'll look at the things that they haven't been as happy with and looked at how they felt. It just by shifting the way you look at it, they always walk out saying, yeah, I'm actually doing pretty darn good. I'm like, because they were doing pretty darn good. So it's simply by focusing what you are doing right can make a big difference. And remember that gentleness is key. So as we move into food, I would like to look at our collective energy. In the last year, energy has become a big focus of my practice because I've never, ever seen so many people in absolute severe exhaustion. So in the last 10 years, I would normally get one person a year that was at what's called adrenal exhaustion, which is they can barely get out of bed. This year, I've spoken to 30. So I would just like to have us all evaluate our energy a bit, because no matter where you are right now, we can get you better. We just gotta we gotta be real and say, this is where I'm at. And it is mostly women that tend to just push through their energy issues. Men, we do too, but women a bit more so. So these are my 4 questions for you. First one is, how do you feel in the morning when you wake up? How long does it take for you to, once you're out of bed and standing, getting out of bed is its own problem. So once you're out of bed and standing, how do you feel? How long does it take for you to feel like yourself? Is it 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half an hour? That's totally good. That's a great space. Is it a few hours? Do you ever really feel awake? Are you feeling groggy all day? Do you ever suddenly feel hungry? Do you get the angry hungries? When you get hungry, do you have to eat now? And generally something sweet? Do you ever crave salt or salty foods? And do you ever get a second wind late at night around 9 or 10 p.m.? So if you answered yes to like one of these questions, you're probably okay. But if you're getting into like 2, 3, or you're saying, yeah, I'm all 4 of these, then you may be dealing with exhaustion, burnout, adrenal fatigue. And there's a lot we can do to fix that, because our adrenals are getting, there's more pressure on us today than even 10 years ago when I started practicing. And our adrenal glands are these 2 little triangles on top of our kidneys, and they do our entire stress reaction, our fight or flight. They handle adrenaline and cortisol. They actually produce some estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. They do so much. And because they handle our stress reaction, they're also in charge of our blood sugar balance, our wake-sleep cycles, our blood mineral levels, our tissue breakdown, our blood pressure, and our immune system. So when you're dealing with this early, mid, and late stage exhaustion, these are the body systems that start going out of whack. So when I work with somebody who's dealing with adrenal fatigue, they'll usually come to see me for one of these reasons or digestive issues, which usually also happen at the same time. They rarely, even if they've just left their job due to exhaustion, do they rarely actually see me for exhaustion. And what I want to kind of wake us all up to is that we can have great energy, we can feel good, and we can have joy back in our lives. We just have to be aware that normalizing our exhaustion is something we don't need to do. Because when our adrenals start getting tired, we can get a ton of new symptoms. We can just be tired for no reason, even if we've like had a good night's sleep, we just feel run down or overwhelmed. I see this as you're losing resilience in your life, like stuff you could handle, you're not handling as well. You have difficulty bouncing back from stress. You're craving salty foods because your blood pressure is sitting a bit low, and you're craving sweet foods because your blood sugar is a little off. And we tend to become a bit of a caffeine addict. We want more caffeine. And later stages is that caffeine's not doing anything anymore. We don't have the cortisol to pick us up. So if you see yourself in those symptoms, I do have a quiz at adrenalfatiguecode.com where you can just evaluate your energy and see where you're sitting. And there's quite a lot of information in there too to help you get to feel better. And what happens when we're tired, when our blood sugar's low, we go for these foods. So these foods are lovely. Don't they taste so good? They pick up your energy for a moment, but they drain your energy in the long term. The nutrients that these are missing, but are needed for digestion, are B vitamins and magnesium. So to use caffeine and use refined sugar in your body needs B vitamins and magnesium. B vitamins and magnesium are your energy producing nutrients. So these actually like suck the life out of you. When I was 25 and describing my health then, when I was so foggy, I'd forget what day of the week it was and where I was going, my diet looked like this, and I was in extreme adrenal exhaustion as well as many other problems. So instead, bringing in just a good breakfast can like set your whole day up. And a good percentage of you are now looking at this saying, oh geez, I have to eat breakfast. Some of you, especially if you're wired for anxiety, your stomach doesn't want food in the morning. And that's absolutely okay. What I'm talking about is eat something before like 11 a.m. And that can get your body really steady. And for you, you might have a really good lunch then. But the first food that comes into your day is something that either puts you on a blood sugar roller coaster where you have energy that goes up and down all day, or it keeps you balanced and happy. And it's not the same for everyone. So a great breakfast keeps you full for 3 or 4 hours, is something that you really love and you really enjoy. Those are the 2 criteria. That's it. I want you to feel good and have it for a long time, but also that you actually liked eating it. And some people will feel fantastic with a high protein breakfast. So that could be like a picture that's not really showing itself, which is like this is an egg breakfast. It could be a smoothie, but you might be a high carb person. So what's out of style right now is my kind of diet. I need a lot of starches and carbohydrates to function. And if I have a high protein breakfast, I'm hungry in an hour. The math doesn't work out. And any health expert will say, no, that's not true. And I will say, no, it is true. 2 pieces of toast will keep me going for 5 hours, but no starch for breakfast will make me hungry in an hour. That's me. So to do some experiments and seeing which one works best for you, because somebody else having a high starch breakfast will be hungry in an hour. And this could be like a good quality sourdough bread. It could be oatmeal. It could be quinoa. It's something warm. It could be leftover root vegetables. You can tell I like a starchy breakfast because I'm salivating here. It could also be a high-fat breakfast. It could be like avocado on toast. It could be chia pudding. It could be one of the many recipes that you're going to find in the ketogenic books over there, the high-fat foods. You will all fit somewhere in one of these 3, and it just takes some experiments to fix it, to find out which one yours is. Never eat a food because it makes rational sense to you. Eat a food because it feels and tastes good to you. That's what makes the most difference. And then we also need a snack mid-afternoon. So our natural cortisol reaction is that we wake up in the morning and we stand up. That's when cortisol, our energy hormone, starts its way up. And so that's why getting out of bed is its own problem. But yet, because you have to stand up for this to happen. And then it peaks around noon and then starts its way down. And melatonin then mirrors this and peaks around midnight. we naturally have a blood sugar and energy downfall in the afternoon. Our work life tends to say you must be at full strength all afternoon, which is what's burning us out. So if we can organize our day a little bit better, that helps, but we always have this low. Lunch and dinner are also about 6 hours apart. So we eat lunch around noon-ish and we eat dinner around 6-ish. This is a big window. So around 4 is when, oops, there goes another chair. Jen's going to get you another one. We're now at 3. So at about 4 o'clock is when your lunch is running out of steam. But a lot of us will try to push through. And we'll get home and we'll drive home and we'll get home and we'll try to make dinner, but we're too tired to make dinner. And we're incredibly hungry and craving food. And so we eat everything out of our cupboards. That is an incredibly common thing for all of us to do. By putting a snack around 4 o'clock, we can pull our blood pressure back up and our blood sugar back up and get to home so we can make a good dinner. And that good dinner sets the stage for the next day because you're going to sleep better, you're going to have leftovers for lunch the next day, everything is balanced out, all because you ate an apple at 4 p.m. So the most important thing to make sure you do is we almost all need this afternoon snack. And it needs to be something that wakes you up and gives you energy. So what you might want is something very sweet. And so, like, I always want a cookie, but I've learned I can eat a cookie, but I feel better if I have fruit. So I've developed a rule that I have to eat fruit first. I can never tell this brain you can't have something. I can tell it, though, you can have it after this. So I eat the piece of fruit, and then I forget about the cookie. It totally works out. I have like an inner 3-year-old that has to be placated. I don't know why, but I do. And so if you ever see me here in the store, I leave the store around 4, and I have an apple in my purse, and I eat it on my way home. Sometimes I pick up a cookie because I'm a grown-up and I can, but I have to eat that apple first. A couple squares of dark chocolate can work. Bliss balls, which are a bit heavier in protein. I have a great recipe on my website. It could be just some veggies, nuts and seeds. First, eat something, see how that feels. Then find the right thing. So try a bunch of different things and see which one gives you that pick-me-up. Caffeine this is not a good time for caffeine, though I understand in our current work life why a lot of people go for caffeine around 3 or 4 because you still have a few more hours of work left. To make sure you sleep at night, caffeine would not be the best, but sometimes this alone can do it. We also want to make sure we're getting enough B vitamins in our diet. So as I mentioned, all of those sugary foods and caffeine burn through B vitamins. And B vitamins are incredibly important for your adrenal glands, but also just for every cell to make energy. So B vitamins are found in whole grains and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and meat. It's in almost every whole food. So eat foods and you will get B vitamins. Eat refined flours, you lose B vitamins. And they are water soluble, so we need to have them regularly. If your energy is really, really low, bringing in a B vitamin supplement can be handy because it can help just kind of bring that back. But a lot of the times we can get this from food. But the truth is that we have a lot of gaps in our diet. Even the best of us eating as well as we can will still have some nutritional gaps. If we go back to my life when I was 25 and I had no nutrients in my diet, I had many nutrient gaps. And we as North Americans have big ones. So this one's saying 15 million people have low serum vitamin C. This is like scurvy level. This isn't like you just don't have an optimal level of vitamin C. No, this is like you're really low. 18 million are deficient in B12. Low levels of B12 are very common, especially as we get older. Testable in a blood test. Once you're over about 50, 55, start asking for a B12 test. B12 deficiencies are hard to find symptom-wise because folic acid found in fruits and vegetables can block you from seeing the symptoms until they become permanent, which is permanent nerve damage. And there's a type of dementia that's linked to B12. So easily testable. So keep an eye on that. It's also a really hard vitamin to absorb, so sometimes supplementation is needed. Vitamin B6 is a really common deficiency, and it's important for our water balance in our body. So if you find yourself retaining water a lot, that can be B6. It can be a histamine issues are linked to B6. And then vitamin D. Even our doctors are saying every Canadian has a vitamin D deficiency. And a study that happened about 5 or 6 years ago found that if we Canadians all had optimal vitamin D levels, the savings to our healthcare system would be $14.1 billion. That includes us taking vitamin D and the testing for our vitamin D status. And 38,000 lives. Around the same time as that study, the government stopped paying for vitamin D testing. It costs about $60. I would recommend it if it's a part of your budget once you've been supplementing with vitamin D for about 3 months. So once you've been on vitamin D for about 3 months, your blood is now saturated at that level, and now you can test to see if that is your right dose. If you're still low, double your dose and come back in 3 months and get tested. So if you have that as extra income, that's a good process to go through just to know what your vitamin D level is. We also, so these levels are just so you don't have rickets and scurvy and nerve damage. What research is finding, though, is that there's also the optimal level of nutrients. And it's hard for us right now to get this optimal level, but it's been connected to a lot of big issues like cardiovascular disease and stroke and cognitive function and cancer and all those other scary things. And the truth is that our produce is a bit more deficient than it used to be. Our lifestyles are more stressful than it used to be. And so there can be an argument of bringing in some extra nutrients into your day-to-day life. And then we have times in our life that we have a higher intake need, like children and elderly and pregnant women it's almost impossible to eat enough nutrients for the body's needs. If you're under a lot of stress, if you have a chronic disease, if your appetite is just low, if you found that over the years your appetite has really gone down, that can either be stress or it can be a B vitamin deficiency. And so fixing those can bring your appetite back up. Just having a diet like I used to eat, or chronic medication use, digestive issues can affect absorption. And some of us have genetic quirks where we don't absorb certain nutrients very well. So really, it's hard not to be on this list. And so this is where the argument of specific and thoughtful supplementation to bridge the gaps that you need gapped. I am not a fan of only supplementing and not eating. There is this really delicate balance here. When I was eating no nutrients, I was hungry all the time. When I started working in nutrition and started working with people, I was getting big supplementers where their list of supplements were a full page long. The longest I've seen is 5 full pages. Yeah, and they were also starving, absolutely drivenly hungry. And I realized the connection. When your diet is nutrient poor, your body is searching for nutrients. When your diet is full of supplements, your body is searching for food. So we want to find balance here. So you want to be very specific and careful with the supplementation that we bring in. And we want to also respect food. Because when we take in synthetic and single nutrients at large doses for large periods of time, that can become harmful. So when I first started changing my diet, one of the things that I did was I took a really high quality, high level multivitamin. It had like a B50 complex and everything was at supplemental doses. And it was exactly what my body needed for quite a while until it no longer was good for it. So I supplemented a couple years too long with it. So first year I felt better, second year I felt even better, third year my skin started breaking out, fourth year I was had really bad acne and I was getting this weird my tongue swelling up problem. I went off the multivitamin, all of those symptoms went away. And it was because I was over supplementing for too long and in these synthetic high dose nutrients. So we want to, what we have now is products that are food-based, they're whole food-based, so they don't have, A, they're not that high of a level, and B, they're incorporated into food so the absorption is better. And Mega Food is the sponsor for tonight. warning. But also they started in the 1970s creating technology to incorporate nutrients into food. So what they do is they take food, so say take vitamin C, ascorbic acid, and they take oranges and they put an enzyme together and they incorporate the vitamin C into the oranges. And that allows a better absorption of the ascorbic acid. And they do this with every single vitamin and nutrient. They also bring in food and add that to the multivitamins and all the other products that they have. They are the only supplement company I have seen that gets truckloads of actual broccoli and actual beets and actual turmeric to their manufacturing plant. And they do everything as slowly and as low temperature as possible, and it's free of all the stuff that you want it to be free of. And their passion is nourishing a world in nutritional crisis, and they're hoping to cure that by really respecting food and helping us supplement and balance out these deficiencies that we've created. And so we're going to start by looking at their multivitamin line, and they have a bunch of one-a-days that are, all the stuff that you want free. And what they've created is a one-a-day for everybody, a women's, a men's, and women's and men's over 40. So that allows you to find the one that works best for you. But they have these two here. So these are really unique. So these two were formulated by a naturopath, Dr. Lodog. Her book is in the giveaway bag. And she also has a passion of rebalancing our life. And so she's formulated these two for multiple medications. So anybody who's on many different medications, these multivitamins are specifically formulated to balance out the deficiencies that are common in those medications. And so that's not just good for people over 55, it's good for anybody on many medications. If you're over 55 and not on many medications, you're probably good with the over 40 ones. Iron is another incredibly common deficiency, and it's incredibly common in this store. I'd say this store is the one I see the most iron deficiencies. And when your iron is low, exhaustion is exhausting. Like, you're at a level of exhaustion that is almost undescribable. And it also gives many other symptoms, because what iron does is it actually allows your blood to carry oxygen. So your cells are literally starving of oxygen if your iron is too low. And so that leads to exercise intolerance. That's getting out of breath when you do little things. If I go up my stairs and I'm out of breath, I'm like, oh, I need to look at my iron levels. It can affect your concentration, your mood. It can make you feel lightheaded and dizzy. It can cause brittle nails, pale skin, hair loss, really weird cravings like for dirt, clay, and ice. So if you ever have those, it's probably your iron status, not some else that seemed like it. That's a weird one to have. It can cause tongue pain. It can cause cold hands and feet. But the problem is that a lot of people aren't actually supplementing with iron when they need it, because the prescription irons that you get from your doctor are really high dose iron that are really hard on the digestive system. And so I get a number of people who tend to have very, very low levels of iron who say, no, but I'm not supplementing, I can't do that again. And so what we need instead is to look at irons that won't cause that. As well as that you really need to watch your levels. So I don't want anybody supplementing with iron who isn't a menstruating woman unless they know they have low iron levels. So if you're a man or a postmenopausal woman, if you supplement with iron and you don't need it, your iron levels can get too high, and that's also hard on the blood. But most people most of us know our tendency, and our tendency can get really low. Runners can get really, really, really low. Anybody doing high impact sports can get really, really low. And so the causes of it is dietary frequently, but it's partly because the food in our diet is low in iron. Then we have different aspects of our food, like the tannins in coffee and tea that can bind to iron, making it even harder to absorb. It can be that you just don't have enough stomach acid. So your stomach has to be very strong to ionize and absorb calcium and iron. Iron is easy to find. That deficiency you'll find in a blood test, but calcium you're not going to see in a blood test. So we can assume that there's other possibly other mineral problems if your iron's low. And so we want to make sure your stomach is working as well as possible, and that your small intestine is happy and healthy, And then we also can just be bleeding and losing iron that way. So when I look at somebody and their iron level is constantly low, even with supplementation, I start looking at, okay, where is your iron loss and how is your iron absorption? And we have to really make sure that those are, that we help the iron loss as much as possible, but we really help with the iron absorption. And that tends to be the missed thing. MegaFood's Blood Builder, I learned about in these stores from the vitamin section, the vitamin staff, because they were getting rave reviews on this. It is a highly absorbable iron supplement that's been clinically proven. So they did a study where they followed a bunch of premenopausal women who had low iron, and they studied them for 8 weeks, and they found that not only did their serum ferritin is your iron stores, and the hemoglobin is the anemia side. So that's the actual iron in your blood. So both went up, their energy went up, their fatigue went down, and they had no digestive issues. So I like to talk about this because if any of you have had digestive issues when it comes to your iron, I like to say this is clinically proven because most don't want to try something unless they know it's not going to cause a problem. And so this is more than just iron. It has some beets in it. It has some other cofactors to help with absorption, including vitamin C. Last but certainly not least, I just want to mention the new gummies that you guys all got samples on your chairs. And the reason why I want to talk about them is that we're about 40 or 50 people. That means like 15 to 20 of you are like not excited about swallowing any pill ever again. And that's where MegaFoods brought out some gummies. So 40% of adults don't like swallowing pills. And so they've just simply brought out a better quality gummy. If you can swallow tablets, always go with those. You're going to get a better quality every time. But this is a great option if you gag every time you try to swallow something. So they're made with food, and if you open up your pack, you can see the food in them, and they're plant-based with no gelatin, no high fructose corn syrup, nothing of the stuff you don't want it to be. And they have 4. So we have vitamin C mixed with oranges. We have B12 mixed with cranberries. Another B12 mixed with ginger. This one's really good. This is like my favorite afternoon snack. And then there's a vitamin D. So if you have even trouble with those tiny little capsules, the vitamin D is actually really good. And it's mixed with berries and oranges and ginger to help with the antioxidants and helping with the absorption of your vitamin D. So just keep these in mind. Robin also has them all on her table so you can try them all out. And just remember that these exist if you're really struggling with pills. So last but certainly not least, I just want to end with kind of where we started. Because we've taken a bit of a journey, and we've gone from like mindset to food to supplements, and now let's go back to where we started. Because it's really what I want to leave you with. I want you to I want you to remember one thing more than anything else, is that it's absolutely okay to be imperfect. That potato chips and cookies and chocolate cake live in my life. And I'm a holistic nutritionist, and they always will. If you go to my purse in the back, you will find a bar of dark chocolate, because you will always find a bar of dark chocolate. And I say that not to out myself, but I say that to say imperfect is perfect. That an absolutely pure diet is an eating disorder called orthorexia and isn't healing. A real healing diet is like 80% healthy and 20% cookies and other good stuff. And so just keep in mind that you don't just suddenly have to say, I have to eat all these vegetables and none of the stuff that I like anymore. We can incorporate both. We can add those to what you already like. Give yourself permission to rest. In this world right now, resting is actually an act of defiance and an act of rebellion, and we need to be doing that. I out myself with my naps all the time because I think we need to publicly talk about how important rest is. I took a nap today. We need to change what we think about our do's and don'ts. If you have a list of shoulds and shouldn'ts, do's and don'ts, reevaluate them. Do they still speak to you? Are they actually necessary? And can we just like make a bunch of list of do's instead? Forgive yourself when you fall short. If you're eating that cookie, enjoy that cookie. I'm giving you permission to just enjoy it. And then be curious, how does it make you feel? and focus on what you're grateful for, which could be enjoying that cookie. And simplify things. So simplify things by adding healthy foods, not taking anything away. Simplify things by fixing any nutritional deficiencies that might be draining your energy and stopping you from moving forward. Just simplify however you want to be doing things to get you to the next level. So I'm going to leave it actually on the slide because I want you to remember this. But I'd like to open up the floor for questions. We are going to do the draw at the end. So if you can just like turn around and give Jen a little hands up if you need a thing, and Jen can help you get a ballot. So I want everybody to get the thing, and if you just Jen can help you with that too. So are there any questions to get started? Who's the brave person with the first question? Mm-hmm.
In the list of things about iron,
yes.
Something about from 1950 to 2000 there's been a drop.
Yeah, our iron level, the iron in our food has dropped by 15% in the last 50 years.
Why is that?
The soil. So our food doesn't get the mineral into it unless the soil has it in the first place. And so we've changed our farming techniques and for growth over nutrient density. And so there is some research that certain nutrients are a bit lower than they used to be. Antioxidants may also be lower too.
Are the farm people aware of this?
Yeah, well, it's the conventional growth. Organic food can, depending on how the farmer is managing their soil, just organic growing tends, and I'm far from an expert in the farming technique, but they tend to be a bit more holistic when it comes to their tending of their soil, and so their mineral levels frequently are higher, but it's mostly in the fertilizer. Any other questions? Yeah.
There's an online question.
Yay.
So when you've eaten something that your body doesn't like and responds to with anxiety, what's a good reboot you suggest? Supplement or food? Oh,
great question. So when the body is reacting with anxiety, the first thing I do is kind of just sit with it. It will pass, and protein foods can calm it down. So if in that moment you're feeling anxiety and you have any room in your stomach, having something with protein, like a higher protein something, can pull that anxiety down. But a lot of the time, if this is possible, your body wants you to feel it. And so if you can just sit with it and remember and say, okay, body, I get it, you don't like this, then usually it passes a bit faster. But again, please, only if you feel comfortable sitting with it, because anxiety can be hard to sit with. But otherwise, protein can calm it right down. Yes? Mm-hmm. So the question is about therapeutic class probiotics. I believe that's a new marketing term. And what I imagine they're relating it to is like higher level probiotics, like either specific strains or simply the amount of probiotic that's in it. They're basically trying to differentiate themselves from the other probiotics. So they might be specifically formulated for certain digestive issues or mental health issues or things like that. But from my experience, I think that's a marketing term, like hypoallergenic. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you, Jen. I have this lovely Jennifer who tours with me and reminds me of things like, I have an office and a business here in town. Should I forget about things like that? So if you want some more help, I do 3 half-hour consults in the store. So Nature's Fair hires me to come and help you. And you can book your appointment. It's the vitamin section that has my schedule. I'll be here, I think, next week. And then I also, if you want a more in-depth consultation, I do have an office in Kelowna, but I do online appointments as well. And there we can do like an hour and a half, and you do a full overview, and then you have email support between as well. So thank you, Jen. That also exists if you need more help. I appreciate that. I always forget that. And like today was the time I'm like, Jen, can you remind me if I forget to do that? Are there any other questions? Yes.
You were talking about breakfast and how it can be different from one person to the next,
Mm-hmm.
and how some people might need high fat or protein or carbs. How do you help your clients determine which one they are?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so the question for those who didn't hear was, with all of these different kinds of breakfasts, how do I help my clients determine which one works best for them? So we do it by experimenting. The first thing I look at actually is, what do you crave? And then I also look at, I frequently ask them, what was like, if you could eat anything in the world and there's no judgment of like nutritional quality, what would it be? And I watch them describe a breakfast that just lights them up. And that's usually where we start. And sometimes, frequently, it's a perfectly healthy breakfast. So I'm like, just do that. Or if they need something easier, because that's like a weekend breakfast, then we try to find an option of that same style. So then I have them for 3 or 4 days do that kind of breakfast. And then I have them do the exact opposite. So I'll have them, so if that's a starchy breakfast, I'll have them do a protein breakfast. And if both are kind of doing it, but neither are doing it, then we try the high-fat breakfast. That's a more rare one. But that's usually what I do. Is I found that people that are more anxious tend to do better with protein breakfast. So that's where I'll start them. People who are wired for depression or lower mood tend to do better with the starchy one. So that's where we'll start them as well. But it really, like, we got to, like, then they have to figure it out themselves. So the rule is, you enjoy it, and you are curious with how it feels. And usually within 2 weeks, they come back and say, yeah, that totally doesn't work for me, but this does. And then they'll know. And then as the weather changes, that can change too. So smoothies can be the perfect breakfast all summer and be terrible in the winter. It doesn't mean it's not a good breakfast, it's just too cold right now. And so to allow them to also adjust when needed. Like, my perfect breakfast is mostly perfect until it stops being perfect, and then I do make an adjustment. And so just to be aware of that when it's happening. But usually I start them with, and I encourage you to do this too, what would you eat if you could eat anything in the world? That's the place to start. And how does that feel? Because that usually, like, you know what feels good, you just might not have connected it to that yet.
Have you come up with a certain percentage of people that are kind of fit one category versus another? Like, what would you say most people do best on?
That's much more rational than I usually work. I would say it's about 50-50. Carbs versus, yeah. And like just yesterday, I got an email from a client I worked with on Friday, and she had giant sugar craver, and she loves chocolate, so I put chocolate in her breakfast. And she's like, my chocolate cravings are like totally managed. And it's just because I said in the morning, because she always, and when I asked her what works best for her, was always something starchy. That's what felt good to her. So then I took her oatmeal and put some dark chocolate, I put some cocoa powder in it, and that made the best balance. So it really is very individual. I do find though, those of you who are like big sugar, big chocolate cravers, if you give your body a little bit in the morning, that usually says to your body, yeah, this was okay, so it doesn't call for it all day. It's surprisingly effective. But I can't give you exact percentages because I don't pay attention to that. Yes?
Does that then influence the rest of the meals that you would suggest for the rest of the day? Or like if you start with a carb, are you thinking more protein later?
That's a great question. So especially for those online, if breakfast is one, does that dictate what the rest of the day is? Yes, kind of. So I'll frequently make sure if breakfast is starchy that there's some protein in lunch, and I won't care so much if it's a high protein lunch whether or not there's protein in lunch. So usually, but again, we're all unique, and we don't there isn't this perfect macros of carbs, fats, and proteins, other than we all need all three every day in some form. So it's really creating some adjustments for each person, but protein deficiencies can be common in big sugar cravers, so I just want to make sure that there is some stability there. And that starchy breakfast has to have a lot of fiber to create some balance too. Because if it's like just donuts, you're on a blood sugar roller coaster. So I forget that because I tend to talk to you guys, which are like health food store people. But this is online, and I was like, no, it can't just be donuts. It also needs to have fiber in it. Some good fat there too. Any other questions? Okay, so let's do the draw. So I'm going to be around afterwards. I'm going to be around here or wherever, and I can take your one-on-one questions if you do have questions that you just rather not ask in front of everybody. But who's going to get this one? So put your I want the gift basket vibes in. So I'm going to get it for you. So far, it's worked every night. The winner is Phyllis Irwin. Yay! So Robin at the back has your lovely, oh, let's bring it up. You want to see how great it is. So it's a book by Dr. Lodog and some supplements and gummies. So once again, thank you Nature's Fair, thank you Jennifer and Robin, and thank you guys so much for coming tonight. This has been a 3-day tour and I've just had the best time ever, and it's all because all of you have left your houses and come out and let me talk at you for an hour. So thank you. Don't forget about your 15% off. I have cards up here, and Robin has some at the back table, and then if you want a free consult here in the store, just grab one of the vitamin staff, or I can usually find the schedule as well. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.